dreaming and listening and going to that place of deep insight have always been really important ways that humans have stayed in Aini and, sacred reciprocity with the living world around them. And, our dreams actually have so much to teach us about our inner process and our engagement with the outer world. And, not just dreams that we have when we're sleeping, but also our waking dreams. And in a way, our dreams actually kind of call the future into being, what we imagine, and the kind of the insight we can pull from the imaginal realm. And I think throughout history, there's always been seers and dreamers and guides in that way that have really helped people to stay more in reciprocity. And things are actually really potent at this time astrologically for us to be dreaming the reality that we want for ourselves and the collective. We have Saturn and Neptune traveling really, really close together in the beginning few degrees of Aries this year, but especially through the month of July. And then we have an exact conjunction of Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees Aries next February 2026. And 0 Aries is the cardinal degree of the zodiac. It's like the creator degree. And Saturn is all about like structures, boundaries, forms. It really likes to build things that last. So it's about being able to be disciplined and do the legwork to make strong foundations. And Neptune is really, this capacity of imagination. It's the imaginal realm. And I think what we're seeing right now is actually a lot of the structures that don't have the foundations to last kind of falling down and crumbling. And so on one hand, like the Saturn Neptune traveling really close together at the beginning, Aries is like the breakdown of old structures, because Neptune also has this capacity to kind of like diffuse boundaries. But then on the other hand, it's like this capacity to actually dream the future into being that we want for ourselves and the collective. And so it's just a very, very potent time. And, we also have Pluto just at the beginning few degrees of Aquarius, and we have Uranus at the beginning few degrees of Gemini this year. So we have all the outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, and Gemini, all at the beginning degrees of new signs, which is very rare. But they're also working with the 3 modalities of cardinal, fixed, and mutable. In astrology, right, there's 4 elements and 3 modalities. So 4 times 3 gives you 12. So we have a cardinal, a fixed, and a mutable sign of each element: earth, air, water, and fire. And so we have Pluto at fixed air, Aquarius. We have Saturn, Neptune at cardinal fire, Aries. And then we have Uranus at mutable air, Gemini. And so we're all getting like major activations in all of the 3 modalities. And so having all the outer planets at the beginning few degrees of those modalities really, I think, lines up with, moving into the Taripay Pacha, as the kind of Andean prophecy says. We've just moved into the Taripay Pacha. We've really moved into this new time, this time of capacity to come back into Aini and sacred reciprocity with the living world around us. And I think it's really important for us individually to take responsibility for what future that we're calling into being at this time, because, the potency of our beliefs in creating reality is really augmented at this time, and we're on a very accelerated timeline. And so we want to make sure that we're dreaming the future into being that's going to be really the one that we want to leave, not, for our great grandchildren. This is about the long vision, the big vision. And, I think the way that modern culture has kind of programmed a lot of us is to kind of think of like kind of instant gratification with the fruits of our labor. And it's like, it's like you get sick, you take a medication, it cures the symptom, but it's not really healing the root cause of the symptom. Or it's like, it's like this very quick timeline where nature is a really, really long, long timeline. Like think of the life of a old growth forest, right? It's like the people that were alive when that forest began aren't going to see it in the old growth stage, right? So it's like having the long, long vision. And we're the ones dreaming the future into being at this time for the generations to come. And it's like, do we want to keep living in a world of consumerism and exploitation of resources and other life, or is like, do we want to be leaving a world of reciprocity where we are stewards of the living world around us? And I think that's really the big question at this time. And there's just so much potency in this moment to support the vision to come into reality, to come into form. And part of that is really working with the imaginal realm. And regardless of what you're seeing on the news, or what your experience of reality has been up to this point, we're kind of entering into this time of just so much possibility, and we have to really give ourselves permission to think outside the box. And I've heard some astrologers say that like we actually don't even have the capacity to imagine what the future is going to be like, because it's going to be so different than what human history has been up until this time, which is exciting, but it also feels like a responsibility in, really taking responsibility of anchoring into love, anchoring into compassion for yourself and others, anchoring into possibility, and really saying no to like the fear and the apocalyptic visions, because there's a lot of that in the collective unconscious, right? Through stories and movies and kind of doomsday prophecies. And so, we have to kind of think of humanity like rising up like a phoenix from the ashes, I think, at this time. And love really overpowering the fear, and evolution really being the way forward, and collaboration being the way forward. And I think it really starts with each one of us becoming really, really clear with what energy we're going to engage with. And it doesn't mean that you just like put your head in the sand and you pretend like horrible things aren't happening, but it means that you use your voice and you use your actions to be in as great of alignment as you have the capacity to be, and also to hold that vision of a future where it's really collaborative, it's really co-creative, it's circular systems, right? The way that modern society has been operating, it's like a system built for infinite growth in a closed loop system. It's not sustainable. Sherry Mitchell, an indigenous elder, talks about a myth from her tribe about the cannibal giant, and the cannibal giant just has this insatiable appetite and just eats, right? And that's kind of what this capitalist system, it's like just maximize profit at minimum cost, and it just it's exploiting the earth's resources, it's exploiting plants and animals, it's exploiting people, and it feels really soulless. And I think we really need to bring the spirit and the soul back into culture. And some people talk about humans as being like really mythopoetic creatures, and that if you look at history throughout time, like cultures have always had their myths. And there's this way that we navigate through the human experience through that mythic realm and working through like archetypal energies, and in a way we're all, each one of us is kind of living our own myth. And I think sometimes dropping in with that can really help us to understand more deeply, like what kind of a legacy do we want to leave behind us. And sometimes when we heal, like we heal through very like physical measures, right? We need to like do PT or go on an elimination diet or work with certain plants or work with certain medications and kind of to heal our body. But we also like have this soul, spirit, emotional healing layers to work with too. And so sometimes like the soul level of healing needs to be through that mythic realm, and to reclaim like parts of ourselves that have been lost or haven't had space to be recognized, and things like that. So I think it would be wise, for us to really listen to our dreams, and not just our sleeping dreams are incredible, like the dreams we have when we're sleeping. And there's a lot of plants you can work with, like mugwort or blue lotus, that really help you actually make a deeper connection with that realm and help you remember your dreams. Some people don't remember their dreams really well. It also can be really helpful to have like a dream journal, or sometimes people will just, record a voice memo right when they wake up. Because often if we don't take that moment right when we wake up, in kind of that liminal space between sleep and waking, we'll forget about the dream. But I also think at this time, like really, really, really important to pay attention to our daydreams as well. Like what are we seeing in our daydreams as our future, for ourselves and the collective? We don't really need to know all of the physical, practical steps we need to take. I think it's a lot more about actually returning to our intuition and our feeling, sensing selves, and really actually anchoring into the felt sense of what we want life to feel like for ourselves and the collective. And there's a lot of work, because there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that dropping into that felt sense and finding ways to anchor into that is just a tremendous resource at this time. And right, if you think about like the patriarchal paradigm, like it's very mental, it's very it's like humanity in a way has been disconnected from the body, which is a much more feminine aspect of experience. And so just reconnecting, I think, with the feminine aspects of experience, so like the sensing, the feeling, finding ways to kind of deepen listening to your intuition are really, really important at this time, because I think it's going to really help us guide forward in a good way. And I think, indigenous cultures have so much to teach us about that, because when we have a lot of room in modern culture to kind of be out of reciprocity. There's when you're living in really close relationship with the earth, you have to really listen, to stay in reciprocity, so you can stay alive. And there's a lot of people suffering in modern society who don't have access to things that they need, like housing and food and stuff. And so I recognize that. But for people who do have access to those things, we have so much resource available to us. It's kind of unprecedented, in people that were living more closer to the earth and like hunter-gatherer, or even agrarian societies, right? It's like you need to pray to stay in alignment, to see that next step, because if you don't, you might not survive. And so in a way, a lot of the civilization advances have, allowed us to like let go of that connection of listening to spirit, because we've kind of had a lot more wiggle room. And what are the ramifications of that? I think it looks like we're facing some huge ecological disaster or challenges because of that, because we've been so out of reciprocity. So it's like there's been a huge cost, and not just for humanity, but for the rest of life. And so I also think that, so I think a lot of it is just deepening that relationship with listening and feeling and sensing, and also, knowing that there's this capacity for life to like change on the dime. Things can be radically different from one moment to the left, or from one moment to the next. And, it does seem like, where am I going with this? That, I think just staying open and believing that there's, like trusting that we have the capacity to figure this out together. And that's the only way we're going to figure it out. And I don't think any one of us, right, has all the pieces. It's really about each one of us showing up and bringing our medicine together, to move forward in a better way.